Humans are a rather peculiar species. Biologically, they aren't very impressive. Their body mostly consists of carbon and water, much like most other species in the galaxy. They don't have thick armor plates or deadly venom, or any extraordinarily powerful muscles. They aren't even the apex predators of their own ecosystem, one born of violence and competition. The only advantage they seem to possess is their intelligence and stamina, which paved the way for their rise as a technological species. But the foundation in which human civilization stands is shaky at best. Throughout the few thousand years of its existence, humanity has spent most of their energy and resources fighting each other in pointless petty conflicts between individuals and civilizations alike. It's so incredibly bad that even murder between their own species is a real problem they face all the time. Technological advancement did little to solve the problem, and in contrast, actually worsened it as humans created deadlier and more destructive weapons to use against each other. There hasn't been a single point in their entire existence where humans didn't point their weapons at one another, and they've been so preoccupied with fighting one another, they have barely managed to step outside of their home planet. The dozen or so spacefaring, intelligent civilizations in the rest of the galaxy operated differently. Most of them were peaceful settlers, looking for worlds and star systems to terraform and harvest energy from. They often choose not to interfere with things beyond their borders and only have a military to protect their borders. Then there are expansionist, more aggressive civilizations. While they do not attack major civilizations due to the potential of great losses, they expand their borders quickly, venturing out to unexplored territory to find habitable planets, providing space and resources to facilitate their growing empire. Occasionally, more primitive planetary civilizations exist on the planets they target. However, interstellar warfare is often one-sided, as the difference in technological development causes any armed conflict to lead to a winner very, very quickly. So when they do encounter a primitive civilization, sending off an ultimatum for surrender is usually enough. Every intelligent species is wise enough to know that fighting a more technologically advanced enemy is futile and will only cause unnecessary bloodshed. When one of these expansionist civilizations encountered Earth, humanity was in the midst of a great planetary war, one that had already consumed hundreds of millions of their own lives and flattened entire cities. Even after all the technological advances in human technology, the very essence of violence and warfare seems to be etched into their very being. The particular civilization that found Earth consists of an intelligent quadrupedal species which are incapable of speech. Instead, they communicate by changing the intricate colors and patterns on their skin, similar to how chameleons or octopuses change color to express emotions. They picked up a low, faint radio wave from the direction of Earth, with patterns that separate it from background radio noise from cosmic radiation. The closer they got to the planet, the louder the signals became, until human speech became audible. By carefully dissecting each message, they slowly learned human language and sent a message to Earth while they headed towards it. The message was simple: surrender or leave, or face utter annihilation. If any other intelligent species had received that message, they would have left or surrendered without a second thought. They would have known that resistance is futile, as the technological gap is just too big. Unfortunately, these are humans, which are possibly one of the most violent, bloodthirsty, and ridiculously stubborn species that by some miracle leapt into a technological species. However, humanity is locked in the midst of a great war that has engulfed the world, referred to as World War III. The situation in Ukraine deteriorated 3 years ago. No one knows who fired the first shot, but Russia, China, and its allies are now in total war with NATO, fighting in battles that consume millions of lives and flattened entire cities. As the war locked in a stalemate, both sides pooled in every bit of resource they had to win the war and bleed the enemy dry. Artillery explosions constantly bombarded the air across every front line, while tanks and military vehicles constantly rolled forwards to the battlefield. With both sides threatening to use their primed nuclear arsenal and actively making more nuclear bombs, the rest of the world watches nervously. Meanwhile, somewhere far from the carnage, It was 2 a.m. when someone first noticed the oddity. He's an astronomer operating a radio telescope designed to capture radio waves from the cosmos. There are plenty of natural sources for radio waves up there, like distant stars blooming into supernova, quasars blasting radiation into deep space, or angry black holes consuming trillions of tons of matter. But this one was different. Usually, natural radio frequencies are random and erratic, like white noise on a television screen. But this one had patterns that repeat and connect, like an image or a message or something of the sort. At first, he thought it was a military satellite or something of the sort. They've been very noisy lately as the war progressed, often interfering with the telescope. But he soon realized that the signal's origin came from a spot in the night sky, about 70 light-years away, too far to be anything man-made. So he pointed the telescope towards the source, focused it, and listened closely. Although still far too weak to be picked up by commercial radios, the signal was unusually strong for an interstellar object. He quickly contacted his coworkers, trying to discern what message the radio waves were trying to convey. It took weeks of work, mostly because many who worked on the signal assumed it came from a natural source or a man-made satellite. But once that assumption cleared, we were able to decode the message fairly quickly. What's even more surprising is that the signal seems to be in English, albeit with many grammatical errors. Life in Planet 3. Civilizations. Your planet is us now. Leave or slavery or death. Grammatical errors aside, it is believed that the message meant civilizations on Planet 3. Your planet is now ours. Leave or submit, submit or die. This message played on loop, again and again, getting stronger and stronger each time. While the world's governments didn't pay much attention at first, the intensity of the signal soon became deafening, filling each radio frequency with that message over and over again and disrupting communication lines. The Americans thought it was the Russians, and the Russians thought it was the Americans, playing a trick to cause confusion or panic. But as the world space telescopes pointed towards a point in the night sky, it revealed what was coming: an unknown number of lights, headed straight towards our solar system. Taking into account the speed of light, and by measuring the intensity of the Doppler effect, the world's scientists, physicists, and astronomers determined these foreign objects will arrive within 5 years. As soon as this came into light, the world fell into a state of panic. For one, there is now indisputable evidence that intelligent alien life exists in the universe, and that they're headed straight towards us with hostile intent. Secondly, we only have 5 years to prepare. Lastly, the world has been locked in a war that has already consumed hundreds of millions of lives, and it doesn't look like it'll be ending soon. Now, a new threat is quickly approaching, unlike anything the world has faced before. Every single world leader, every single military general, every single politician, and every single person who knew felt the same thing then: fear. For a while, the war continued, driven by the hatred both sides had at each other. But it didn't take long for the gravity of the situation to befall everyone. There were others coming, others much more advanced than us, coming to take our land and kick us out of our home planet. So humanity decided to do something about it. For the first time in 3 years, the world leaders sat in the same room. The presidents of the United States, China, and Russia, along with each and every one of their allies, sat in a UN conference room. It was awkward. A tense silence filled the entire room, and no one looked each other in the eyes. Whether it was hate, anger, rage, guilt, regret, or embarrassment, no one knows. For 10 minutes, no one dared speak. The silence was finally broken when a man stood up in the far end of the room, nearly entirely covered by dozens of other heads. He slowly made his way to the front of the room, where a large podium stood with a single microphone attached to it. The placard located on his desk revealed that he is a representative from Ukraine. He was careful not to bump into anyone and took a minute to finally arrive at the stage. He looks up at all the world leaders present, takes a deep breath, and opens his mouth to speak. "Leaders of the world," he said, his sound amplified by the microphone and bouncing across the room. We have been locked in a devastating war for 3 years. In those 3 years, I've seen how much it scarred our world, and how much we scarred each other. I've seen dead bodies littered everywhere, and I've seen countless families grieve their dead. My country was one of the first affected by the war, and I came home to find my wife and 2 children in a body bag. The man holds his breath, trying to control his suppressed emotions. He takes in a deep breath and stands up as straight as possible. But even after all that, we cannot continue fighting. If we stay on our current path, those foreign invaders will take over, and there will no longer be any nation left on Earth. All those hundreds of millions that died will die in vain. I know each and every one of us has our own ideas, our own beliefs, and our own differences. But just this one time, I ask each and every one of you to stop pointing your weapons at each other and focus on the bigger threat. Today, let no 2 humans see each other as enemies, but as comrades to fight as one for our planet. Let us march together and point our weapons not to ourselves, but to the enemy. If they want to take our home, we will make sure they pay for it with their blood. This speech echoed throughout the room and into the hearts of every human being present to hear it. Soon after, a man stands. Then another. Then dozens follow. The United States will withdraw its forces from the front lines. China will withdraw its forces from the front lines. Russia will withdraw its forces from the front lines. And every other country followed suit, ending the war faster than it started. This marks the end of World War III and the beginning of a new war, fought not amongst humans, but by humans to a whole other species. Slowly but surely, one less gunshot and one less explosion was heard each day, until the front lines finally fell into a relieving silence and somewhat spectacular silence. For the first time in human history, no 2 countries were at war, and all worked around the clock to prepare for the approaching invaders. Russians and Ukrainians marched together, trained together, and worked together. Chinese and Taiwanese did the same. So did the Greeks and Turks, the Indians and the Pakistanis, the Israelis and the Palestinians, the Americans and the Iranians, and every country with every other country. Where there was tension and conflict, now there is peace and cooperation. For when threatened with extinction, humanity is capable of amazing feats. The world started pumping up weapons once more, but it was no longer aimed at each other. Soon, borders started to dissolve, and humanity began to unite as one, with a common goal in mind. Everyone started working with sweat and tears to prepare humanity for the worst to come. Engineers, physicists, scientists, astronomers, mathematicians, and other experts around the world gathered to create planetary defenses and weapons. Where other civilizations fled or submitted, the very stubborn humanity prepared and pointed its weapons to the skies above. The icy blue gas giant is visible in the sensors of the vessel as they flew past the outermost planet of this star system. The inhabitants of Planet 3 called it Neptune. In front of it were tens of thousands of vessels of various sizes. Their sensors have picked up signals from radio waves escaping from Planet 3's atmosphere, with data revealing that their species is only just recovering from a devastating planetary war amongst their own kind. It's now only a matter of a few planetary rotations before they arrive on its surface and take full control. Planets like Planet 3 are rare, and thus extremely valuable. Not many planets in the galaxy have the perfect conditions to have liquid water and an atmosphere to protect against cosmic radiation, and are suitable for life to thrive on. While it is possible to terraform such planets into existence, the process takes thousands of stellar cycles and an incredible amount of resources to pull off. So the aliens encountering Planet 3 is like a human encountering a pile of gold. With their advanced technology and the ultimatum they sent earlier before, they can simply just walk unopposed into the planet. The species on Planet 3 is stupid and ridiculously illogical, fighting amongst each other instead of traveling to the stars. Fighting for resources on their planet instead of tapping into the resources outside of it. It's a miracle these primitive beings even formed civilizations, let alone travel out of their home planet. It's likely that they'd have fought themselves to extinction anyways. given enough time. They're nothing more than a joke in the galaxy, a failed product of evolution. Weak even by planetary standards. The alien commander flashed a series of colors and patterns to the rest of its crew, signaling an order to prepare communication channels with the species on Planet 3. The others in the same room as it flashed colors back, indicating that they have received the command and are doing so. Using the data they have received for human radio signals, the aliens have managed to learn much of the human language called English and have perfected it to the best of their abilities. Shortly after, they send a radio broadcast to Planet 3. Have you surrendered? Due to the distance between them, it takes a few planetary cycles to receive a reply. Yes, you are free to land on our planet. We will provide whatever is necessary for your arrival. All we ask for is our survival. Good. As long as you obey us, your species shall remain to exist. Another planetary cycle passes. What are your commands? Gather your planetary resources and collect them onto the continent you refer to as Europe. Then exterminate 90% of your population, as keeping all of you consumes too many resources. The remaining 10% will live under our rule. The time required for messages to be received decreases as the distance between their vessels and Planet 3 rapidly closes. Understood, it will be done. The vessels closed in, getting closer each cycle. Finally, the planet and its natural satellite is visible on screen. Prepare for our arrival. We will land in 0.2 planetary cycles. Understood. The vessels approach Planet 3, passing halfway across the orbit of its natural satellite. They've done this countless times, as technological civilizations are always smart enough to know that resistance is stupid and bound to fail. They know that they are technologically unmatched and opt to either escape the planet or submit, leaving the planet ripe for the taking. After all, what is a planetary species that has barely reached space to an interstellar one? So imagine the horror in their eyes when their sensors registered tens of thousands of objects leaving the planet's atmosphere and flying straight towards them. What is this? They transmitted to Planet 3. They received a reply only moments before the objects arrive, appearing to be small metal tubes with a chemical propellant. Our little welcome gift to you. Each of the objects suddenly erupts into a ball of plasma, powered by the same physical reactions that light up the stars of the universe. Entire ships dissolve and burn as the extreme heat literally melts and vaporizes their hulls, while shockwaves decimate ships that get too close. Within just a very small fraction of a planetary cycle, half their fleet is reduced to space debris, and most of it retains significant structural damage. The inhabitants of the vessels which had survived the onslaught viewed the carnage with horror, as seen from their rapidly flickering skin changing to all sorts of hues and patterns. It was their equivalent of screaming. They hadn't prepared for this. They believed it was impossible for an advanced civilization to be this stupid, to raise arms against an enemy with far superior technology. As a result, they never even bothered to check if humans had somehow concealed weapons. But here was humanity, impossibly and ridiculously stubborn, raising arms even after wounding themselves. How could they have managed to create so many devastating weapons after only a few years following a great planetary war that killed a significant portion of their population? They called for reinforcements, but the sheer distance between stars meant that it would take at least 100 solar cycles of Planet 3 for backup to arrive. These quadrupeds, later to be dubbed chromatons by the humans, one of the largest empires of the galaxy, were now forced to engage in actual combat against a single planet species humans. This day marked the first time a chromaton was killed due to combat-related causes in over 1,000 cycles, and a terrifying day for them it is.